Welcome to the Unloved Woman Podcast. Welcome to the Unloved Woman Podcast.
Chapter 7. Some of the Men. My mother was always erratic, but as I got older, I began to notice things I didn't fully understand. It was more than just fights about money. One day I overheard her on the phone whispering to someone named Joe. That was my dad's name as well. But this Joe wasn't my father. I'd catch bits of the conversation, and though I was young, I knew something wasn't right. The tone in her voice was different, lighter, almost girlish. It left me with a sinking feeling, but I didn't have words again. That was the story of my life, no words, but I've got lots of words now. And there it was. And then there was John, my dad's best friend. My mother's flirting with him was blatant, and I couldn't help but notice. It was as if she couldn't help herself, like she needed the attention. I remember one day vividly, John had some, I don't know, like a creature, a lizard or something, crawl into his pants, and instead of letting him handle it himself, my mother rushed after him, giggling like a teenager, trying to help it get it out of his pants. His wife was standing right there watching the whole thing, but no one said a word, and it was strange. I didn't grasp it fully, but what I was witnessing as a child, I knew it was wrong. Something about the way my mother exposed herself, both physically and emotionally, felt unsettling. Looking back, I can see my mother's need for attention, for validation outside of marriage, was just a part of a deeper struggle. She wasn't satisfied with our life, what we had, and no matter how much my father provided or how beautiful our home was, there was a hunger inside of her that couldn't be fed, and it spilled over into everything. Her relationships, her moods, and eventually into me. I became the witness to her secrets, whether I wanted to or not. The cracks in our family were widening, and even though I was just a child, I felt everything crumbling beneath the weight of those unspoken truths. This period in our lives wasn't just about fights or affairs. It was about something unraveling of the perfect image of my mother had worked so hard to create, the world she saw as a well-off family. A mother who dressed well and kept the house clean, but inside it was chaos. I was starting to understand that life, what I had seen, what it had showed to others, was just a mask, and the real truth was so ugly. Chapter 8. Loss and Lost. My father went bankrupt, and with that we lost the house on the river. The place of moonflowers and the statue of Venus that seemed to watch over us, the silent guardian. I always thought the statue belonged there, as though it had been rooted in the earth for centuries, surrounded by the soft glow of the white petals of the moonflowers, climbing the walls and fences, glowing faintly at night. There was tranquility to that house, a balance between beauty and a slow decay that comes with age, but nothing in our lives could remain untouched. We moved to Burragoon. The house was nice enough, clean, modern, with more space than we needed, but it lacked the charm that we had lost. What we didn't know was when we moved into this house, it had secrets. The previous owners, we would later learn, had been a part of a coven, and the air inside those walls carried the residue of something dark, something unseen. My brother, Richard, and I had felt it almost immediately. At night in my bedroom, I would feel something tugging at me, trying to drag me under the bed. It was subtle at first, like a strange pressure or an unsettling presence, but it became more aggressive, more terrifying as the weeks passed. My brother Richard experienced it too. As he's 3 years younger than me, and our mother adored him, her golden child, perhaps she felt guilty because she'd had a nervous breakdown after his birth, as though she hadn't been strong enough to be the perfect mother she demanded of herself. Her shame was heavy, and she carried it like a second skin. When it became too much for her, she would unload it onto me, as if I'd somehow bear the weight of it all. She never listened when we told her what was happening in the house. Richard and I would try to explain the strange sensations, the cold spots, the shadows that were moving in the corners of our vision, but she just dismissed it, told us to stop making up things, that we were just children with overactive imaginations. It didn't matter how scared we were, it wasn't about her, she wasn't interested. So most nights I ended up in the foot of my brother's bed, too afraid to sleep alone in the room. It made me feel like a child again, seeking comfort in the only person who seemed to share my fears. I think Richard appreciated it in his own way, though never really said much. He was used to being the one everyone loved, the one who could do no wrong. I think even then he knew he didn't need to try. He had her love by default. Mum would sometimes pull me into her bed when Dad was working late, as if she needed someone to absorb her anxiety. She would lie next to me, her voice low and intense, talking endlessly about how terrible men were, how I shouldn't trust them. She told me about Dad's friend John, how she loved him, how the love had slipped away into something more dangerous, something she couldn't quite let go of. She shared her secrets with me, as if I was equal, not her daughter. But no matter how many secrets she told me, she never wanted to hear mine. I was only there to listen, to absorb her pain like a sponge, while she poured herself out until there was nothing left. The house had to be perfect. Our lives had to look flawless from outside, but inside we were grumbling. And it was as though we were living in a stage play. Each one of us, we had a role. My role was to be invisible, to be perfect, to carry her shame in silence. But there was no room for me to be a child or a girl turning into a teenage girl. No room for my own fears, my own needs. There was only constant pressure to meet her impossible standards and weight of her broken dreams pressing down on me night after night. In that house, where the walls seemed to whisper and the air was thick with something we couldn't see, I began to understand what it meant to be truly unloved.